Hello and welcome to my video demonstration of the Ethernet trunking lab. In this lab we're going to build a small network with 6 end devices set up in pairs. Each set of end devices is going to be on a separate VLAN, and we're going to address how to connect 2 switches with multiple VLANs across them without having to create multiple connections, one per VLAN. So let's get started. I've gone ahead and started GNS3, so let's start with dragging some devices under a new project. So first I'm going to create a new blank project, and I will call it trunking. And now that I have my project created, I'll go ahead and drag a few devices over. I need S1 and S2, and I'm going to need 6 Alpine Linux machines. So we'll get these drug over, and then we'll start the devices and create some links. So I've got Alpine 4, Alpine 5, and Alpine 6. Now I'll go ahead and start these devices, and while these devices are starting, I'll go ahead and start making some of my connections here. And let me use my connection tool. I'm going to go from 12 to 12, and then I'll go 0 to 1, device 2 to Ethernet 2, device 3 to Ethernet 3, device 4 is going to go to S2 on Ethernet 4. It's going to go here. Now that I've got my links made, I can kind of organize these and click and drag them around a little bit to make it look a little bit neater if I want. And then the last step I can do is go ahead and turn on my interface labels. I can move these around a little bit, make sure everything is readable so I can see what's going on. Some labs this is more useful than others, but I always like to get in the habit of making my background diagram really nice and neat so I'm never confused as to what's connected to what and what my VLANs are and all of that stuff. So I've got my devices organized a little bit, move my labels around so I can clearly see what's connected to what, and then I'll go ahead and start adding some labels. So next step I want to do is I'm going to put some addresses on here, .1, another label, .2, .2, create some nodes, .3, .4, .5, and I need a .6. I can go ahead and move the host portion of my addresses down here to my devices. Just as a reminder, I usually like to keep the host portion of my address matching the device ID. Same with my switch port numbers. It just makes it a lot easier to know what I'm doing. If I kind of know my host devices have an IP address that's kind of matches the host device number, then it makes it really easy to ping stuff because I already know what the address is. I'll move this down here too. Now the next thing that I did, this is kind of optional, but well, let's create our VLAN ID label. So we've got VLAN 10, and it's 192.168.10.00/24. And then I'm going to create VLAN 20, 20/20.0/24, and then I'll create my label for VLAN 30. I'm going to go ahead, you can kind of do this. I always like to do this and make everything nice and clean. So VLAN 10 is my green VLAN, so I'm going to make the font green, click OK, and then I'll go and choose a little bit larger font size so this really sticks out and apply it. Now I can do VLAN 20 the same way, go to text edit, change its color to blue, click OK, and I'll make this a 14-point font as well. And then the same thing for VLAN 30, right click, go to text edit, and I'll change it to red. And then I will select the font and make it a 14-point font as well. So now I've got kind of my VLAN information up here, and then I can even go one step further. I'll just click on my links and I'll go to style, and I can make that red. I'll make this one. Right click on this one. Actually, that's hard to really see that it's red, so I'm going to make it 3 pixels instead of 2. Click OK. Actually, let me zoom in on this a little bit too. Then I'll take this link and I will click the style and make it blue. Click OK. OK. Make this one style, and I'll make that. I think I used this for green. Actually, I've got these colors off. I need to change the top one to green, don't I? I want to make this bottom one red. Make VLAN 30 red. Okay, apply. And I'll go up here and make this one green. I'll just change that over here to this green. Then I'll do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to change this one to green. And bump up the border width a little bit. Change this one to blue. And adjust the border as well. And then this last one we will make red. I'll change that border. Missed some of the borders when I was doing this. I can see that this border is a little thinner, so I'll go ahead and make that 3. And then do the last one. Make that 3. Okay, so I've got my devices set up, I've got my lab built, and now let's go ahead and we'll start putting some IP addresses on host devices. So let me just go and I'll start the console into hold all devices. Hopefully while I was doing this, my Ethernet switches, they can take a little bit of time to boot up, but I've got plenty of stuff to keep myself busy with putting IP addresses on the host machine. So let's see where we are here. Oh, it looks like my S1 is ready for login, so it's ready to go, but let's go ahead and start putting IP addresses. So I'll start with Alpine Linux 1, IP address add 192.168.10.1/24, device Ethernet 0. And it never hurts to do ifconfig and just make sure that your address is right. Let's do it on the next device. IP address add 192.168.20.2/24. Ethernet 0. And device 2 is configured. Device 3 IP address add 192.168.30.3/24. And we can do Alpine Linux 4 192.168.10.4/24. ifconfig, double check it. You want to double check that the mask is right also. If you forget to do this /24, it'll put it in as a /32 network. Let's go to 5. 20.5/24 device Ethernet 0. ifconfig. And last but not least, Alpine Linux 6. 30.6/24. Okay, so I've got all of my end devices configured. Let's move on and take a look at that switch. So I've got my host devices configured. The next step I'm going to do is I want to configure my switches. I'm going to be creating my 3 VLANs, and then I need to assign these ports to the VLANs. And then lastly, I'll configure this trunk between the two. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me log in. Admin is my, click on there, admin. Now I'm going to go into privileged exec mode, and then I'll go into global config mode. Now that I'm there, first thing I do whenever I'm in a network device is I like to name it first, because it's real easy to click on the wrong tab, open the wrong window, and you start putting the wrong commands in, or you put in the commands for the wrong device. So host name S1. Now let me create those VLANs. I'm going to start by creating VLAN 10, and I'm going to name it green. Next, I will go into config mode for VLAN 20 just by saying VLAN 20 name blue. Then lastly, I'll go into VLAN 30 and I'll name it green, red. And I will exit, show VLAN. So I've created my 3 VLANs. I can see that they're named. This helps me understand which ones they are. A lot of times this name would be based on maybe a location or the users that it's assigned to. Next step I'm going to do is I need to assign these users to the VLAN. Right now I've got these VLANs, but nobody's assigned. Everybody is still in the default VLAN 1 up here. So let me go into each interface and interface Ethernet 1 and switch port mode access. And I'll put that in VLAN 10. And I'll go into interface Ethernet 2. And I'll just use the up arrow. I use the up arrow to go through my command history, and I can actually still do that. I don't have to type everything. Interface Ethernet 3, switch port mode access, switch port access, change that with the back arrow and put that in VLAN 30. If I use the command end, that'll bring me all the way back to privileged exec mode from any interface config. And if I view my VLANs, I can confirm I have Ethernet 1 in the green VLAN, Ethernet 2 is in the blue VLAN, and Ethernet 3 is in the red VLAN. So I've got S1 configured. Let's go over and do this again on S2. Enable, go into global config, host name. This is going to be S2. VLAN 10, name green. VLAN 20. Name blue, VLAN 30, name red. Now I can go into interface Ethernet. Can I just abbreviate as E4? I sure can. All I need to do is say E and it knows that I mean Ethernet. Mode access. Now I can just Ethernet 4, I can change that to 5, up arrow, switch port mode access, up arrow again, and change VLAN 10 to 20. Last one I want to do is Ethernet 6, up arrow to bring back Ethernet 6, switch port mode access, and I'll put 6 into VLAN 30, and show VLAN. Okay, so now I've got S1 where I've got, well, I've already checked S1. This is S2. And I've got Ethernet 4 in VLAN 10, Ethernet 5 is in VLAN 20, and Ethernet 6 is in VLAN 30. Last thing I need to do is resolve this issue here because Ethernet 12 is in VLAN 1. So what that means is none of these devices can communicate with the devices over here on the right because this connection is in VLAN 1, everyone else is in a different VLAN. Now what I could do, I could make 3 connections, one for each VLAN, but that looks good on a lab scenario using a simulation, but in the real world, that's 3 extra connections. You're going to run out of ports, you're going to run out of cables. What if these switches are hundreds of feet apart? Are you going to be able to run a connection between the 2 of them? They could be on different floors. So what we'll do instead is we'll make this a trunk. So let me bring back S1 again. And let's take a look at what we need to do for S1. So the first thing we're going to do is, well, we have to configure the trunking. So we're going to configure S1 and S2 as the trunk. So I'm here, going to global config, and I'll do interface Ethernet 12 switch port mode trunk. I'm going to force that to be a trunk. And I've got to do the same on S2. Interface Ethernet 12. And I can double check that with the command show interface trunk. And that does indeed show that Ethernet 12 is trunking. It's going to allow all the VLANs. We're in good shape there. And another thing I could do is if I do show VLAN, this shows this still in VLAN 1 default. It really shouldn't be there. That should be showing as no VLANs because it's a trunk. But that's one other thing. Let's do what show interface status. Show interface status does indeed show it as a trunk. This is another good command to get comfortable with because this shows all of my ports. This is a emulator, so these statuses of connected are going to be misleading, but we can indeed see that these ports are assigned into their proper VLANs. So I've got that done and I've got it. So let's see if we can ping. So I'm going to start at Linux 1. Let me come down here. I've already got a console. So I'll go to Alpine and let me do ping. I only want to send 4 pings. So I'll do -C 4, count of 4, 192.168.10.4. And I am indeed receiving pings across there from Linux 1 to Linux 2. So I've got my pings and verified that. So now let's take a look at how this trunk functions. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to ping the broadcast address. 192.168.168.10.255. And this is going to send a broadcast ping out. And I'm not doing the count, I'm going to just ping forever. And I'm not going to show any responses on here, but we're sending pings. It's going on until I hit Control C. This Alpine Linux 1 is sending pings. So let's take a look at that. We're going to look at the link between S1 and S2 and capture those packets. So I'm going to right click here and start my packet capture. Click OK. And as this starts up, I can see a lot of ICMP messages. I'm going to filter it, MP, and I'll hit enter to apply the filter. And I'm seeing all kinds of pings from 10.1 to 10.255 here. Now I want to go ahead and open this ping, and let's look at these. Let's take a good look at this. And notice here in this ping analyzation, this packet capture, notice on this frame between S1 and S2, I've got an 802.1q header I can look at, and inside of those frames is the VLAN ID. This is VLAN 10. These frames will only go, it's tagging these frames with VLAN 10, so when S2 receives it, it knows to only forward that frame out ports on VLAN 10. So we've taken a look at that, and notice here we can also see that it is indeed a broadcast, all Fs. So S2 is receiving a broadcast, but it's also receiving the additional information. Yes, it's a broadcast, but it only goes out ports assigned to VLAN 10. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this other link. Over here, we'll start the capture. And on the link to Alpine Linux 4, which is on the same VLAN, I'll filter for ICMP, only look at IP traffic. And if I double click on that, notice I don't have that 802.1q frame. I'm only getting an Ethernet frame. It's still a broadcast, but it's still the destination address is 10.255. The Ethernet is a broadcast address as well. But notice I don't have that 802.1q header on there as well. And the last thing we want to look at is let's take a look at this link here. I'm going to start that capture. When I look at this one, I'm not getting any messages. So across this link, we're receiving Ethernet broadcasts going to all Fs. those broadcasts are going to Alpine Linux 4 because Alpine Linux 4 is in VLAN 10. Oh, and I got my colors wrong on this. No, I didn't. I highlighted it and it went red and it made me panic, but it's only going out ports assigned to VLAN 10. It is not going out this one. And what the heck, we can check this one also. And you can look at all of them. Let's look at them all. Why not? On this one, no ICMP packets. Even though this is a broadcast, over here it's leaving as a broadcast, but it's not going to get forwarded out here. Going to Alpine Linux 2, Alpine Linux 2 isn't receiving any of those frames, and neither would be Alpine Linux 3. Double check that one also. So we're sending broadcasts through switches, but because we have VLANs, traffic coming in a port on VLAN 10 will only go out ports on VLAN 10. And when it goes across a trunk, we're going to tag that trunk and put the VLAN information in there so switch 2 knows to only send that broadcast out ports on VLAN 10. So I hope this explains VLANs and VLANs trunking for you. Thanks for watching.